All right. Welcome back to another episode of our fancy podcast. Congratulations to Aaron Judge on home run 62 tonight. He's a frequent viewer of this podcast, so I just thought I would shout him out.
He's the one of the 40.
Yeah. For those of you who have been sending us listener mail asking if we're going to do merchandise, we will once an episode hits 10,000 views. So keep smashing the like button.
Obliterate that like button.
All right. Well, we've got our week 3 and week 4 recap and a week 5 preview here. Do you want to launch into week 3, week 4 review, or start with one of our other segments? What do you cats want to do?
Yeah, let's go review.
We've got a new feature this week, which is we can actually show the Sleeper app. I think we'll find out afterwards whether this worked or not.
Okay. Yes, sir.
So I've got up here just my screen, and we'll go, matchup to matchup, and we can share our thoughts on them. So first one on my screen was me being taken down by Willie. Josh Allen went off 26 points. Eckler continued his disappointing start to the season, although more on that in week 4. Chubb in his last season as a Griner constituent did well, outperformed with 17. Scary Terry beat Tyreek Hill. That's not a phrase we'll say much this season, I think. Brandon Cooks kept doing Brandon Cooks things. Kyle Pitts looked good for Atlanta down there. Zeke and Deontay Johnson with pretty good weeks. Thielen, another good week. Matchup of the kickers was even, and neither one of us had a very impressive defense. Not a ton on the bench. He probably left more points out there than I did on the bench, but any thoughts on how this matchup went down?
I feel like if we looked at this matchup before the season, I don't know if I would have given Willie the edge in this case. I think you guys both sort of probably underperformed a little bit, played average. I think that it just was one of those situations where this is one of the situations where Stafford having a subpar game really hurts you. I think that this league is becoming more quarterback and wide receiver dependent, and if your quarterback has a bad week like mine did during week 4, that could really be detrimental. So I think that's just what happened here.
Yeah, I wrote down that Josh Allen is ridiculous. I mean, even though they only scored 19 points as a team, he scored 27. So he was a quarter of Willie's points, and he's just he threw 63 times.
Yeah, it was
one interception.
Paining me to watch him attempt 63 passes against me. But yeah, I mean, I've just had some guys who got off to really slow starts. Like McLaurin has had a couple big catches to salvage a couple games, but otherwise it's done nothing. Cooks had a really slow start to the season. Gibson, I feel like I'm fighting for him to do something every week. So it was another one of those kind of sleepy performances for my team that cost me. We'll go on to the next one. We've got Cam with the win over Alex. Let's see what we got here. We got Jalen Hurts with 27 points. Najee with a solid performance. Secondary running backs not really doing much for either one of you this week in week 3. Big win, T. Higgins outscoring more. London has continued to put up decent numbers and looks pretty solid. The Cam Cooper tight end woes continued with just 4.8, although that was a marked improvement from the first couple weeks. And Saquon doing Saquon things there with 20 points. Negative points for the defense from the Giants there for Cam. And on the bench, we've got Trevor Lawrence putting up 25. Not a lot on the bench for Cam, a couple guys who were injured. So not much else there. Cam, any thoughts on your own matchup?
This is a tough one. Because Najee Harris had a late fumble in the Thursday night game against the Bengals that cost me 2 points. If you notice, the median was 101.7 this week. So, and then also if I hadn't started a defense, that would have gotten me above the median as well. So it's tough when you leave those points on the board. I remember thinking about that. I'm like, that could be the difference between me being a 5-3 team right now and a 4-4 team. my team's been flirting with the median all year. So it's just a tough one that I wish I could have back.
Yeah, I'm actually going to touch on Cam's team's performance in a later segment. I have a couple notes about that with him in the median, more specifically. But I wrote that Saquon is back, and of course, because Cam drafted him this year. He was I've had him in our keeper league for the past 4 years, and he's been either injured or just non-productive. And then Cam drafts him, and he was the number 1 running back going into week 4. So that's great.
Yeah, I mean, Cam might have squeaked out the win here solely because David Montgomery went down early in that game and was only able to put up 1 point. But you know,
Wow.
if he plays a full game and scores a touchdown, that's probably enough to swing the tide here. Next one, this one was not nearly as close. Rob over Eric. You had Patrick Mahomes actually didn't have that great of a game, but as we'll see, Dalvin put up good numbers. Cordell Patterson, RIP to him, had a good game. Diggs with a solid performance. No one really having a negative performance or underperforming that much on Rob's team as we go through a few here. Hawkinson with 9 points. So pretty solid performance top to bottom from Rob. And then as we look at the bench, Chase Edmonds, Devin Singletary, a handful of performers that were left on the bench for both guys. I'll just give my thoughts on this one. This one to me was all about underperformance from Eric's team. I mean, if you look at the points they scored relative to the points that they were expected to score, should have been a much closer matchup. And, you can just look at the top few guys versus what they were expected to do. Justin Jefferson having his only down game so far this season. That kind of tells the tale of this matchup.
Yeah, that was actually exactly what I had written down. Eric's guys all underperformed. I mean, even Justin Jefferson, which is usually pretty much a lock. Him and Cooper Kupp are like the 2 receivers I would say are pretty much bound to get you 10 to 15 a game at the minimum. So that was definitely a shock, but I think that was an off week for Eric, and week 4 definitely proved that he is capable of putting up points.
Yeah, I think this is a testament to the fact that Rob's team is still very versatile and he can beat you in a couple different ways. Even if Dalvin's not playing well, Mahomes not playing well, Cordell Patterson, albeit he's hurt now, can go off, right? And he just, if it's not Cordell Patterson, it's Garrett Wilson. If it's not Garrett Wilson, it's Diggs, right? So he has a bunch of weapons who they don't all need to go off simultaneously for him to win. But damn, if they all do, then you're screwed.
Okay, on to our 4th matchup. We had Wayne taking down Skip, aka Colin, in this one. I'll give a couple quick thoughts. Actually, a pretty good performance from Colin's top guys here in terms of his Colts, who have been trying to hold him down. But not a ton else performing for him throughout here, and -8 from the defense is never gonna help you get a dub. And then, you had a few guys for Wayne who really outperformed, like Mark Andrews, what they were expected to do. So, this one was more lopsided than I expected it to be heading into the week, to be honest.
Yeah, my initial evaluation was, I think Colin is unfortunately suffering from what I'm going to call first pick syndrome, where usually the person with the first pick always has, like, if you don't hit on number 1, if he's not a rock star, you're so far behind on everybody compared to everybody else. I've been a victim of that in the past in most of our leagues. So I think that's the biggest problem for Colin right now. And I think Mark Andrews is going to be the best tight end this year. I think it's with Lamar Jackson slinging it the way he is. I think Mark is going to take over the throne from Kelsey.
Yeah, I think my dad in this game exemplified a little bit of a turning of the tides that I sort of mentioned before, how the league is becoming less running back powerful and more wide receiver powerful. If you got Cooper Kupp, Debo, Allen Lazard, Devontae Smith, like, I think that my dad went RB0 for the most part. And I think that he's sort of reaping the benefits, albeit this was a game between 2 winless teams. But I think that this is just goes to show how that strategy could pay off.
And then we had Troy taking the L against Josh this week. Troy, I'll let you take us through your thoughts on your matchup with Josh.
I suffered from some injuries to the Lions. My big hitters, DeAndre Swift, who is no longer on my team, and the Sun God Amon-Ra St. Brown, both got injured in that game early-ish, and they weren't able to put up the typical points that the Lions are capable of demonstrating. And I only got one catch from Mike Williams. So, but I think Josh ended up picking up Philadelphia defense the day before the game and streamed them, and they were pretty much the difference for him.
Yeah, Josh has been, I'm going to touch on this a little bit later, but Josh has been sneaky good this year. He beat Jason the week prior, beat Troy this week, and then not to get ahead of ourselves, but he beat Johnny this past week. Those are 3 big time wins in this league with 3 historical blue bloods, 5-3 right now. These are sneaky wins, and these are wins that you want to get early in the season. I don't want to face Troy or Jason or Johnny toward playoff time.
Yeah, definitely. Troy got Lamar Jackson in week 3, unfortunately.
That's actually really funny. My note for my team was I got Lamard.
And then last but certainly not least, we had Johnny putting up 140 points against Jason, who was only able to muster 91 in a losing effort. Some injuries here as well. Really just a lot of guys who, didn't do much with their opportunities, like Corey Davis only with 2 catches, 27 yards. Devontae, only catching 5 of his 10 targets. When your guys, especially your receivers, as we've talked about, are not making the most of the times that their quarterbacks look their way, it's going to be hard to put up points. And then on the other side of the ball, you had Johnny with pretty solid performances. Even when his guys were in the red, they were pretty close to the, expectations for the week, and Robinson going off for way more than expected. And Denver, I've been kind of surprised, especially in week 3, we've seen a handful of games that almost feel like they were decided by a defensive performance, whether it was, like the Giants underperforming or a couple of defenses like the Eagles and the Broncos just going off. That in a league that's this tight, where injuries are not really playing a huge role in strength of rosters, a good defensive performance can be the difference.
Yeah. I think there's something we touched on in the post-draft pre-week 1 podcast, but Jason will live and die by the offensive performance of the Oakland Raiders, right? So if Derek Carr and Devontae Adams and Waller don't have a good week, that's tough, right? And I think he suffered from that a couple times this year so far. He did it again in week 4. And on the other hand, James Robinson and Johnny, like, that's a great value pick. He's like he's in the top 10 RBs right now. So just draft strategies that end up playing out in week 4 or week 3. Week 3.
Yeah.
All right.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
My only note was, when you have all double-digit scores sans one person, it's very likely that you're going to win in our league because of how many players we have playing each week. So, I mean, the only player he had under 10 points was Dalton Knox, Dalton.
Yeah, and he still won the tight end matchup. Despite only scoring 4.5 points with his tight end. So
tight end position is so tight this year.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Zach Ertz is like number 4, and he has like 10 points a game.
Okay, we'll go on to week 4. And this was a bloodbath against Moody this week. Really, this is just the week that my team decided to wake up. Russ played like Russ for the first time. Eckler had 3 touchdowns. I don't expect that from him every week. Williams in the starring role with Swift out, put up 20 plus. Olave, with another touchdown. And the defense, again, continuing the trend of defenses having big impacts. I picked up the Niners this week, and they rewarded me for that. And Cooks finally had his first good game. Whereas on the flip side, as Cam was just alluding to, the Raiders really underperformed as a team, and therefore, they suffered. Not they won their game, the Raiders did, but in terms of fantasy points, they didn't really do much to help Jason. So that was kind of the story of this one.
Yeah, Jason is having a hard time with not paying attention to people that are starting.
Yeah,
Starting.
I saw that. Yeah.
Unfortunately for him, I saw the Alvin Kamara news like an hour before game time, and it was like 9:30 in the morning, and it's not necessarily a big miss, but yeah, that kind of sucks. And I didn't even realize that Michael Thomas wasn't playing as well, so that certainly hurt him, but I don't think it would have made a difference in the end. When you score 170, it's you're pretty much guaranteed a W.
Yeah. This is just, I mean, there's not much you can do. I mean, you really want to be on top of your lineup, but there's not much you can do when Nick's going to drop 170 on you. Jason's been a little bit disappointing, I'll admit, through these last 2 weeks. I know he'll probably turn it around, but not really the start that I think a lot of us expected him to have.
Cam suffered defeat at the hands of the old master Wayne. He's still got it and still lording it over his offspring. Cam, your thoughts on your defeat at the hands of your old man?
This was one of those games where I had all my players done by like 4:30 on Sunday, or I guess I had George Kittle to play on Sunday night, and then my dad had Cooper Kupp and Deebo Samuel playing on Monday night, and it was almost peaceful because I saw Deebo have 2 long plays and Cooper Kupp get 19 targets. Meanwhile, Allen Robinson gets it's like 2 targets the whole game. That's a story for another game with the LA Rams offense. But I knew it was going to be a bloodbath once the Sunday games ended. So it's been tough beating my dad the last couple of years. He usually bests me once a season.
Yeah, Wayne's always got a trick up his sleeve or two. But my biggest takeaway from this game is I think Wayne's arrived. He's on a 4-game win streak. He always ends up being competitive one way or the other by the end of the season. And like Cam alluded to earlier with his wide receivers, I mean, I don't even know what to call Deebo. He's kind of a running back receiver mixture. He's a flex position on the actual field, and even the trade with me, I think Cam Akers might actually end up performing in the long run, although Henderson had more carries, I believe, this week.
Yeah, I mean, just talk about depth when Wayne has Goff and Dobbins on his bench, and I think they both led their position this week in terms of bench players putting up points. So, there's 53 points sitting there on his bench that didn't even get a chance to get in the game for him. So yeah, he's got a deep team, and I agree, he's going to be a tough out for sure. Okay, Eric beat Alex in this matchup. Looking through strong quarterback play from both of them. And then, really Justin Jefferson got back on track. Hawkinson, I'm sure we'll all talk about this in multiple contexts later, but Hawkinson in rewarding Eric for his faith in that trade with 35 monstrous points. That, I think was probably the player who tipped the scales in this one.
Oh, for sure. I wrote that it was the Hawkinson revenge game. He was extremely upset with his general manager. He didn't like the way that the front office was run over on proving me wrong sidelines, and he took it out on the poor. Who were they playing? I don't even remember.
Seattle.
Seahawks,
Seattle. Yeah, that defense is horrible.
Yeah. Troy, you just mentioned my dad kind of on a 4-0 win streak right now. Alex is actually moving in the opposite direction. I think he's either 1-3 or 0-4 the last 2 weeks. So two teams kind of moving in different directions. But yeah, I mean, we knew Eric was going to be this kind of team. He's deep and he'll find a way to beat you. I think that Hawkinson trade hopefully continues to pay dividends for him, but he looks like he's somehow gotten even more well-rounded.
Colin getting off the schneid with a win over Rob here, gets his first win of the season. No production to speak of from his number one overall pick, and injuries abound. Russell Gage with a shadow performance, but he still gets the job done, largely on the strength of the weakness of his opponent more than anything else. A lot of underperformances this week from Rob's team probably was what turned this one.
I'm still a little confused as to why Colin is still riding the Matt Ryan train. I think he could probably, I think Colin's have to make some moves and begin to send some players around, because unfortunately he's been bitten by the injury bug. I think he's going to have to find players, especially get a little more RB depth and try to figure out the quarterback situation. I don't think Matt Ryan's the answer there. I think he has depth at other positions. I think he needs to start moving some players around and really make some moves. I don't think he's destined for the playoff set if he keeps going on the same 1-7 trajectory.
Yeah, I wrote that it was Colin's first win, but he still didn't get to beat the median, unfortunately, and also that it might be timed for a fire sale, and to echo what Cam said earlier. I mean, something I did last year. I got rid of Saquon very early on because it was just like, all right, I'm not going down this path again. And with a high draft, high value running back in fantasy football, if he's not performing, he's just kind of an anchor on your team. And I think he needs to spread out and get some depth.
Yeah, I mean, the bright spot is Prescott should be back soon, which will obviously help. But I know Colin said after week 3, when Matt Ryan had another dud performance, that he felt like if he gave up on him at that point, that it would be the week that Matt Ryan broke out, and that he would regret that decision. So he wanted to ride with him one more week. I think he ended up with 17 points. Nothing too shabby, but this is probably the week where I would expect him to go hard into the waiver wire at a couple different spots, and potentially quarterback being one of those. 2 matchups left. We've got Troy getting back in the win column with a win over Willie. Troy, your thoughts on your win over Willie?
I feel like I had a pretty solid overall team performance this week. Jamar Chase has been held in check pretty much this year, thanks to the abysmal offensive line of the Bengals. But I got a pretty solid performance from Mike Williams, which was promising because it wasn't just a long touchdown. It was actually some volume work. Josh Reynolds was a little pat on the back for me, little sneaky pick I got. I think either Saturday night or Sunday morning, I saw that Chark had been listed out, and so I scrambled and grabbed him because him and Amon-Ra were out, so I knew there was going to be a high volume there. And I got pretty decent performance from my kicker. I will miss Youngway tremendously, but I had to part with him to secure me Nick Chubb for the future.
Yeah. I think it's funny that you mentioned the kicker in the defense situation. I think the shrewd fantasy manager knows that like the kicker and defense can often win you championships. I think if you have even if they are streamed, winning those matchups really could be the difference between you winning and losing games. Not that it was necessarily in this game, but I think that those are major keys as far as moving toward the path to a championship, especially when somebody like Jamar Chase doesn't play well. You got a defense that can bolster that for you. So good on you for making those picks, the right picks that day.
Yeah, I always think it's high risk, high reward when you've got multiple players from one team in your lineup, because a bad performance from that team can really impact your entire day at the fantasy office. And Troy, I thought it was a shrewd move to diversify your roster a bit, since you have 2 Bengals, and we're pretty heavy on the Lions as well. You ended up picking up a Lion, but he was the only one you played on this particular day, given the injuries to Amon-Ra, like you were discussing. So I felt like, we'll talk later about the trades as well, but I thought getting, a guy from the Cleveland Browns and diversifying just the number of teams that you slot into the roster each week was a wise move as well.
Thank you.
And then last but not least, we had Josh with another win over Johnny 3. Some really strong performances across the board here. I mean, you had more than 100 points put up by both teams, and Lamar, didn't even have a good game, and Josh still put up 149 points, largely on the strength of a whole bunch of 20+ spots, and the Eagles again, with a huge performance, another 18 points there. So I think the story of this one though is told, through the running back and wide receiver position here. You had really good, look at this. I mean, both guys had their running backs put up 20+ points. And then just a couple other spots where Josh was able to outscore Johnny, made the difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Josh Jacobs breakout game was a pretty nice flex game for our good friend Joshy. I'm glad that he was able to kind of turn his team around. It's always nice seeing Josh in the win column. And my other note was, I think Derrick Henry is just going to do it again. He just does it every single year, and here he comes again, 2 20-point games in a row, and it's probably just going to be the same thing for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I think this is unfortunate. Johnny's played 2 high-scoring teams back-to-back weeks. I think that happens more or less to Johnny every year. It seems like he always has some of the highest points against throughout the regular season. Dameon Pierce goes off this week too. I think that was huge. All of a sudden, Josh's team, who we thought might be a little bit washed in the beginning of the season, looks a little bit scary. I know, just another testament. He's had 3 sneaky good wins these past 3 weeks. I do not look forward to playing him in the coming weeks.
Yeah, Johnny has the second leakiest fantasy defense. He's given up 517 points to his opponents, only bested by Jason, who's given up 542. Yeah, definitely a victim of the schedule. NFL giving him a lot of primetime games early, trying to get those good matchups in. And that's taken a bite out of his record for sure. So that's the week 3 and week 4 recap. We've got a few other segments, and then we can talk week 5. You want to talk about some over and under reactions? And I'm happy. I've got a couple written down, but I'm happy to let either of you guys go if you've got some over under reactions you wanted to discuss.
I can go first. My first over under is Colin's team bad, hurt, or both?
I think it's mostly hurt. He's got some guys like Javonte Williams, and I mean, really top to bottom. It feels like every player on his roster has taken a beating and has missed time. I feel like if his roster was completely healthy, he would not be 1-7. He might not be 7-1, but I think he'd be, much closer to the rest of the pack.
Yeah, agreed. I think it's mostly hurt. I sort of mentioned before that I don't love some of the management moves he's made from the quarterback position. I don't love the Matt Ryan move, but Dak's gonna be back. He's making the most with what he's got. He also hasn't used a ton of fab yet. So I feel like maybe if I was in a situation, I might have used a little bit more fab, considering how much of a stressor that I probably would have felt like I was under with all those players being hurt. It's definitely unfortunate that they're all very hurt, but there's also things that he could be doing as well, I think.
The only other thing I'll mention is, he drafted 3 defenses. And so obviously that's going to put a strain on your depth. And I think he's seeing, if there was one team that was not positioned well to take injuries early, it was the guy who allocated 3 roster spots to defenses.
Mhm.
So, I think that he's a victim of his own demise a little bit there too.
Certainly.
Troy, you have a view on that one?
I kind of think it might be both. I don't really see where he has value aside from Jonathan Taylor. I mean, now he's lost Javonte, which was one of his high picks for the year, and I don't know. I think he really needs to spend some fab this week. I think he's going to be a very active participant in free agency, and he's going to be sending trades out like crazy. But it also, I'm wondering if it might be, if he loses next week, I'm not sure if he's going to be capable of making the playoffs.
I have one. I want to. I have my notes here from the post draft pre-week 1 podcast, and it was pretty consensus across the board that we did, positional breakdown, who was the best team by quarterback, running back, receiver, tight end. At the time, it was pretty consensus between Nick, Colin, and I that Colin was one of the 1A/1B teams with the best running back depth. Obviously, that's changed a little bit with Javonte getting hurt. My over under reaction is now Josh has the best running back room in the league. Over under reaction, or is that an overreaction?
I don't think it is an overreaction. I mean, we just talked about the bell cow that is Derrick Henry. Dameon Pierce, I think, is going to continue to be one of the best draft picks. A clear RB1 in an offense that doesn't have a lot of other weapons, doesn't have a lot of other choices. Josh Jacobs has been like the only Raider to actually perform up to expectations, maybe with a little bit of Devontae. So no, I think, that especially at that 1, 2, 3, that's pretty much as good as it gets in the league right now.
I would have to agree to that. I think he's got the best running back room around. If I go back to my grades from the week before, he had a B+ in his running backs, and I think now with Dameon Pierce coming onto the scene like he was expected to, I think now he's moved up into the A column for sure. And with Nick getting rid of Chubb.
I think you mean adding Williams and Swift.
Yes, until Swift comes back.
Cam, you have a view on that, whether that's an overreaction or underreaction?
I like Nick's. I like your stable of running backs just because you currently have 4 RB1s, or 5 technically if you consider Jamal Williams an RB1 and Swift's absence, right? You got Eckler, the Swift Williams combo. I guess Zeke is not really an RB1, but he can put up RB1 numbers. Antonio Gibson is still there. Like, those are all 4 serviceable guys. I think the only thing that limits Josh is his depth after his RB3, which is, I think, Darrell Henderson, who's sort of fallen off a cliff a little bit. But I mean, I would want any one of Josh's running backs on my team right now. I've been in talks to them about Josh Jacobs all year. So I think that really kind of, as far as 1, 2, 3 punch right now, especially with the Swifts, Jamal Williams, who knows what's going to happen after a couple of weeks. I got to just give the edge to Josh.
Just as long as you don't talk directly to Josh Jacobs, because that's tampering. So you're not allowed to do that. Yeah, I sweat anytime I have to put Zeke or Antonio Gibson into my lineup because I don't know whether they're going to score 18 or 2 points. So I agree. I think I would still lean towards Josh's stable over mine.
Yeah.
I'll give one here. So should Wayne be starting Jared Goff going forward? Goff is the number 5 quarterback in fantasy. Been putting up numbers like crazy, 33 points last week. Should Wayne be starting Goff over Tom Brady?
Yeah, I think so. I think Goff is running that offense. It's going to be a top 5 offense all year because that defense is just terrible, and they're constantly having to score points to stay in the game. I mean, they're the highest scoring team in football so far. And he's got weapons all across the board. I mean, and Jared Goff he's just always been a relevant fantasy player, and everybody on his team has always been relevant because of that. But yeah, if Wayne didn't pick him up when he did, I think I spent like $3 less on Fab than him and lost out to Goff, but I think I would be starting Goff over Burrow. So
yeah. I mean, I think it's just it's a volume play too. I think Goff's been a little bit inconsistent, but I will say Tom Brady has been more inconsistent. I think Goff's had like a 15, a 20, 15, and now a 30, 35 game. Brady's put up over 15 points just one time, and it was his last week. That offense is definitely changing in Tampa Bay. We're seeing Leonard Fournette become more of a bell cow. I foresee the Lions being down a lot more in a lot more games this year just because of their defense. I think for the same reason that I like Trevor Lawrence, I like Jared Goff over Tom Brady.
I have just one more, and will Josh ever trade again?
No, I think that's an underreaction. I don't think he will.
Yeah.
I tried to engage him in trade talks this week, and I did not even get a response. I think he is shook when it comes to trading.
Yeah, that text response he sent to Colin was so funny.
I don't trade.
I don't trade. If anybody's wondering why, I went back because I knew 3 of the 4 people that were involved in that trade, but looking back last year, it was Aaron Jones and Tyler Boyd for Cooper Kupp and Jamar Chase.
Oof.
Oh man.
I mean, at the time, it wasn't that bad. Aaron Jones had just came off like a 30-point game, and we didn't realize that Kupp was going to be the best have the best fantasy wide receiver year in history, basically. So
F in chat.
F. Sorry, Josh. I did not mean to do you so dirty.
I've got one more in this section, Cam. I don't know if you had any others or want me to
No,
throw
go
mine
ahead.
out there.
Go
All
ahead.
right. Is it an overreaction or underreaction that Geno Smith should be added to one of our rosters this week? He's done damage against Atlanta and Detroit the last couple weeks. I think he's like the number 9 quarterback in fantasy so far through 4 weeks. Is that an overreaction or an underreaction?
It's an underreaction. I think he's I added him last week in my money league, but it's a super flex league, so you have to have 2 quarterbacks. But yeah, that he's looking really, really sharp, and he can also move as well. So you can always you always love having quarterbacks with running back points.
Yeah, I mean, I have my eye on him. There are other. I mean, of the quarterbacks who are still available in our league, I'm interested to see how the Zach Wilson story continues. I know he kind of got off to a rocky start this past week, but I think he still has a lot of weapons around him. Jimmy G obviously is still a interesting character, but I think out of the guys who are still available, I really want Marcus Mariota to be good, but you're not going to be a good fantasy quarterback when you only complete 7 passes in a game. So I think of the available guys, yeah, Geno Smith's probably the guy I want to add.
Marcus Mariota doing his best Justin Fields impersonation.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that gives me pause is like he only put up 6 points against San Francisco in week 2. And yes, any quarterback can have 1 down week. I mean, my quarterbacks have had like 3 down weeks. So it's totally possible. But, Atlanta's defense, Detroit's defense, probably 2 of the worst in the league. Not if there's 2 teams you want to play to get your season on track, those are pretty good ones to play. So Seattle's got a tough road ahead. I'm interested to see, how he does when he plays some more tough defenses and when it gets cold, up north in Seattle and, they play outdoors. Does that impact him as well? So I'm on the fence because I'm also like almost ready to cut bait with Matt Stafford. But I think I'll continue to ride with him. I've thought about Geno as well, although I think there's just too many red flags for me at this point.
Dude, I'm ready to cut bait with Allen Robinson.
I think there might be a Rams hangover.
Yeah.
It's looking really. I think Cooper Kupp's the only one that didn't have a drink in the offseason.
Dude, you got to change that offense around, man. You're not going to win games with 19 targets to one guy who finished as the wide receiver triple crown last year. Like you just gotta mix it up.
Yeah, I mean he gets open every single play, but you can't just keep feeding him.
They need Odell. They need to bring Odell back.
Yeah, apparently he's in talks.
I know.
I was looking at him to slide into my IR spot.
That is safely reserved for Deshaun on my team until further notice. All right. So shall we do some shine or shades?
Sure.
Kind of a similar type concept here to overreaction, underreaction. I've got a couple. I'll just spit a few out and then we can go over to you guys with any more that you've got. All right, shine or shade, Colin will not beat the median this season.
I'm gonna have to shade that. He's definitely gonna have to beat the median at some point. I mean, Jonathan Taylor's probably gonna have a 50-point game, and that'll be the week if there is no others.
Yeah, I'm gonna shade that too. I mean, week 1, the median was 111, then 122, then 101, then 111 again this week. I mean, I think he has it in him to. I mean, if you average that out, that's probably somewhere around 110. I think he'll hit over that. Yeah, I'll give it to him once. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to shade it as well. I mean, he was only 10 points off it this week and he had more injuries. He had more guys underperform. Like it's not going to take that many things to go right in a week for him to get over it. And, if he spends some fab and improves that roster depth this week, you could see it happen in the next couple weeks for sure, I think. So I'm going to shade it as well. Okay, my favorite one of these to do is last week there were 4 players acquired off the waiver wire for a total of 31 fab spent. Shine or shade, we see fewer players or fewer fab spent. You can kind of take that either way. Like basically, what do you think will happen on the waiver wire in terms of number of acquisitions and the amount of fab spent?
I'm gonna shine both. Or shine as in more fab spent and more players added. I think that there's a handful of guys. I mean, you saw Javonte go down. Mike Boone is available. Caleb Huntley, Latavius Murray. Like we see a lot of guys who Geno Smith probably get picked up this week. Kenny Pickett might get picked up this week. I think there's a little bit of a changing of the guard for a couple teams this past week, and I think that'll be demonstrated with fab purchases this week.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going over as well. I think there is going to be more money spent on fab this week. I think Colin might spend over $30 this week just himself.
Yeah.
But yeah, there definitely is a need for some pickups. This was an injury bug week. We saw a couple of big names go down, and there's definitely some spots. There is, I guess. No, we're going to talk about free agency moves later. So I'll get into that later.
All right, my last one is also fab related. There's currently 11 teams that have $80 or more remaining in fab, including 4 teams that have $100 or more remaining in fab. Do you see one team with 105 in fab? We won't name names.
The only one with surplus.
Do you shine or shade a team ends the season with 80 or more dollars remaining in fab?
I have to shade that. And there's no, I mean, if you finish with that much money left, you're not trying. That'd be like not setting your lineup all year. I mean, you're gonna have to spend money at some point.
I'm just going to take a look at who currently has $100 or more in their records, right? So if you look at currently the bottom 3 teams in the league all have $93 of fab or more. My concern is that there's going to be somebody with, above 80 who is just no longer contending for the playoffs, and they just won't feel obligated to spend that money. So I'm going to shine that's going to be the case. I don't know who it's going to be. I don't think that the people who are at the bottom right now are going to necessarily remain at the bottom, but I have a feeling that because of inactivity or for one reason or another, that somebody will be out of the playoffs and still be above 80.
Yeah, I'm going to shine it for that reason as well. I think it's probably likely that someone just like doesn't think about their fab and like doesn't use it, mostly due to inactivity. I do think we're starting to reach the point in the season where so many teams have so much fab though that you're going to see inflation for players. And like if you want a guy like this week, there's not many A+ options on the waiver wire. There's a lot of guys who could like add to your roster and add some depth, but I think we're going to see what in previous weeks would have looked like overspending if you want to go get your guy.
Right.
I'm actually expecting players to get more expensive over the next few weeks in general.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I think looking back on it now too, after we have 4 full weeks in, people were kind of a little bit concerned about Eric's fab spending habits in the beginning of the year. I think that looking back on it now, that does kind of make sense. I mean, Jeff Wilson's still RB1 in San Francisco. He got like 90% of the looks last night at least. That doesn't look like so much of an overspend right now. Granted, he spent a lot of money on Pittsburgh defense after TJ Watt got hurt, but some of those other spends don't seem too ridiculous.
Yeah, this will also be something that I was going to talk about in terms of free agency moves, but my favorite waiver wire acquisition so far is still the $9 spent on Pittsburgh. And in 3 weeks where he's had Pittsburgh's defense, they've scored a combined 7 points for his team. So he's paid more than $1 per point through 3 weeks. But yeah, I mean, the Jeff Wilson move more than makes up for that one for sure.
Yeah.
All right, that was it for me in terms of Shine or Shade. So I'll let one of you guys go.
I got one.
Good.
Is Cam's team actually worse than his record? So he is currently 4-4, but he has the second lowest points against and the third lowest points for. So he's just skating the line every week.
This is a good one. I literally almost came up with a Shine or Shade that said Cam is in trouble, of not making the playoffs, being there on the 8th spot, and with fewer points than the 2 teams directly beneath him. I think he's a pro. I'm gonna neither shine nor shade. I'm gonna say I don't know. It is like partially shaded and partially he's in the sunlight. I think he's where he should be at the moment in terms of like where his roster is relative to the league. I wouldn't expect Cam to be like a buy contender when we get to the playoffs, but I wouldn't expect him to be outside the playoffs looking in either. I think he's going to be close to the cut line, but on the inside.
Yeah. I mean, there's been a couple of weeks, like I said, where I was within a couple of points in the median. The median has been by far my toughest opponent this whole season, even though my dad just blew me out. This year has been interesting for me. This whole year, I've been looking for a little bit more RB depth. I've been trying to move some players around for like that RB4 after AJ Dillon. And these next couple weeks are going to be big for me because Tyler Algier looks like he's going to get to the number 1 looks in Atlanta. He might be that guy to take the next step. I have essentially like 6 wide receiver 2s or wide receiver 3s on my team. No true wide receiver 1. I really need somebody to make that step. T. Higgins might be that person, but I mean, I got Jacoby Myers, Drake London, Allen Robinson, who's trash, Kadarius Toney. Like any one of those guys could be a true wide receiver 2. I just need somebody to take that step. And I think and obviously, what I thought was my strongest position when I drafted the league was my tight ends. It's just not been the case. So I need to figure that out. But I agree. I didn't realize that I was the 8th seed until just before this call, and I was like, I guess that is pretty fitting. But I think that I'm right where I should be, probably a little bit higher ranked than I'm going to shine. That I'm probably a little bit overrated.
Yeah, I'm shining. He's overrated as well. I think he's actually worse than his record. I think he should be 2-5, not 2-6. I mean, I'm sorry, not 4-4.
Mm-hmm.
I think that he's skated by the median twice. I think he was within a couple points 2 times, and it's just it's a points driven league.
Yeah,
about buckets.
I feel like the good news though is he's got guys like Drake London and Tyler Algier who I really expect to have like a very strong remainder of the season. Drake London obviously is a rookie, he's like still learning each week, but I mean he looks really good and he's getting like a huge share of the targets in Atlanta. And Algier as well, through injuries and ability is getting more and more looks. So I think he's got the opportunity to improve his roster. Plus, I think tight end is probably one of the easier spots, maybe along with quarterback, to kind of find a guy on the waiver wire that can, be a plug and play option. it's not like running back where, a starting running back is going to be drafted and scooped up and there's not going to be any more available. So you can find a tight end or a quarterback if you need one, to kind of improve your roster as the season goes. So I still think you'll make the playoffs, Cam. Don't worry.
I needed that. I have one more shine or shade, and this was related to, and I don't know if we're going to go over like other transactions, but last week Alex spent 15 fab on acquiring Richie James for Isaiah Pacheco, which I don't know if are you more surprised that he spent 15 fab on Richie James, or are you more surprised that nobody else bid any money for Richie James on a Giants team where Richie James is the wide receiver 1 now? So I guess my question is, shine or shade, he overspent for Richie James.
100%. I mean, that the Giants wide receiver room is like so liquid. Like, it makes no sense to me. I mean, Sterling Shepard was the clear number 1 going into the season, and I think he had like 20 points total before he tore his ACL. Kadarius Toney hasn't played in 3 weeks or something. Like, he just doesn't get on the field. I think Dable's still trying to figure out the wide receiver room with this team. And I don't think Daniel Jones is a good quarterback at all. So I think that having a combination of low target shares plus bad throws equals bad wide receiver room. And I mean, it's just the Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley running in the end zone show. Every time I watch them, it's one of the others just running it in from 5 yards out. So, yeah, I think so. Yeah, that's my answer.
Yeah, I'm going to shine that he overspent. I mean, if there's anyone who lost the award for GM of the week, it was Alex for trading away Hawkinson and then spending 15 fab to get negative 0.6 points out of Richie James. Neither one of those moves looked that bad at the time. But hindsight is 2020. Both turned out to be, unfortunate events for him in week 4. So I'll shine that he overspent.
I'm not even sure he should have gotten rid of Pacheco.
Yeah, Pacheco someone could spend money this week to pick up Pacheco the way he looked this weekend. So
someone could.
In theory, one may have a bid.
One may be able to spend money on him. Yes, that is true. One may.
Any other shine or shades?
No, I'm all out. I'm fresh out.
Yep.
So let's talk about transactions over the past couple weeks. Anyone want to lead off?
We got to start with the trades. We got a couple big trades to talk about. We've already touched on them a little bit. Mm-hmm. We got the 2 guys who were involved in the big one, right? The DeAndre Swift's, Jamal Williams, Nick Chubb trade. And then I guess also Troy was involved in another trade with my dad, Cam Akers, 2 weeks ago. I guess I'll give my opinion first, because my opinion is the most important out of the 3 of us in the Chubb Swift trade. I like it. I like the trade a lot. I know there are some people who had opinions about it. I know Colin is very opinionated about these things for some reason. I like the trade for both teams. I think Nick both. This is one of those situations where it's like a good bargaining situation where both teams got what they wanted. I personally love the DeAndre Swift buy. I think he's still going to keep playing well when he comes back healthy, and he got an insurance policy with Jamal Williams. Obviously, Nick Chubb is going to do Nick Chubb things. I love the creativity with getting the kicker involved and adding some fab there. That really made the trade really interesting to watch from a third party.
Go ahead, Troy.
Yeah, no, that was Nick had reached out to me and wanted Jamal Williams straight up for, I think, Antonio Gibson, and I was a bit hesitant, and he was like, all right, give me a minute. And he came back with offering me Nick Chubb. And I had no intention of going for Nick Chubb, because I had no idea that he was even in possibility of relinquishing him. But when he sent that trade over, I had to mull it over for a little bit, and I sent a baby counter offer over to him, but essentially it was Nick's trade. It was originally $10 of fab, and I countered with $5.
I
But,
thought about coming back at 7, but I decided that would be too petty. So
No, I would have declined it back. No, no deal. No deal.
No deal.
yeah, I agree. I feel like it really is a win-win. I talked about, the value to Troy of having, a diversification of offenses that he's pulling from each week. And to me, I mean, Chubb was really my only guy who was like performing consistently. And I could just see if he took an injury and was out for a few weeks, like that could be my season right there. So to be able to add some depth, I think I dropped the Titans backup running back who had like one good week and then was scoring like 2 points a week after that. So because obviously Derrick Henry is just a beast. So to have Swift and get his handcuff, who put up like 30 points this week in Swift's absence, I felt like helped my offense as well. And I do think I upgraded at kicker, although that's obviously a week to week thing, and not the most important position to be strong in. And we'll see whether $5 a fab comes into play later in the season, but I do like having more rather than less, so I'll take it. Yeah, I felt like it was a win-win, and both of us got performances out of the guys we traded for this week. So, that was good to see. I have to give a shout out. If there's someone who I think wins general manager of the last couple of weeks, I got to give it to Troy. I think he acquired Williams in a trade that sent Dortch to Wayne, and then Dortch now looks like someone who might be droppable, and then parlayed Williams into a Nick Chubb trade, and picked up Reynolds on the waiver wire. Has picked up Robert Woods. And now Treylon Burks is hurt as well. So Woods should be getting even more targets. So, I mean, kudos to Troy in terms of general manager of the last 2 weeks, in my opinion.
Thank you. You send a lot of hooks out there, you're bound to get a couple bites. So I think I'm probably at the most transactions. I don't know if Sleeper keeps track of that, but I'm definitely seeing my name pop up in the league chat more than most. But yeah, the Dortch pickup and fling out was, I picked him up on, I think on Saturday, didn't play him, and then just traded him to Wayne.
We've hit on the trade and free agency business I wanted to mention. So if there's anything else you guys wanted to touch on.
Cam picking up Algier after I dropped him was a very smart move in hindsight, obviously, but yeah, he looks like a really good running back. I had no idea who he was when I drafted him, but after watching him a couple of times, he looks like he's going to be a stud for them.
I sort of have a little bit of a luxury of living with my roommate is a huge dynasty football player. He plays dynasty, like a huge dynasty league, and he's like, got to draft this guy Algier. I was like, who is this guy? So thankfully I knew who he was, and I'm in Atlanta, so that helps also. But yeah, I mean, we'll see. Caleb Huntley got a lot of looks. He scored a touchdown against Cleveland last week, so hopefully Algier gets first looks. But we'll see. I've been looking for some RB depth. I don't know if Najee Harris is what the hell is going to happen in Pittsburgh, but it'll be nice to have a little more security there.
While we're broadcasting, Colin has made a roster move and dropping Javonte Williams.
Yes, I just peeped that myself. He likes to drop people before
he does
before waivers come out.
I love the pumpkin crying. I hope we got it. Speaking of Eric, we got to talk a little bit about the Hawkinson Hunt trade, right? We've talked a lot about the Hawkinson side. That was another one that people originally were talking about and Colin thought might not be too fair, but I mean, obviously eating your words immediately with Hawkinson dropping 30 bomb, and I think Kareem Hunt had 8 points. We'll see. I was trying to swoop Kareem Hunt earlier this year with Eric for AJ Dillon, and the talks just kind of fell through. But because I thought for a while that Kareem Hunt was going to get traded and be RB1 somewhere.
I still think he is. I think that he'll end up getting traded to somewhere like Seattle or something, because their running back always ends up getting fucking hurt. But I think he's going to get traded, which is part of the reason why I did the Chubb trade, because once Hunt's out of there, Chubb's value goes up. And also when Watson comes back, I'm sure Chubb's going to get a lot more catches, because apparently they just don't throw him the ball.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see how the season unfolds for the Cleveland Browns running backs. I mean, that was like the other thing where I was always holding my breath as a Chubb owner is Hunt gets a lot of like red zone looks and obviously is like the pass catching back there. So I mean, Chubb is RB1 and has been for at least the first 3 weeks of the season. And but there's some limit to how many points he can score when he loses a lot of valuable opportunities to his backup. So if Hunt leaves or if Chubb goes down, I mean that could be like a tide turning event for Alex or for you, Troy, depending on
Mhm.
how that pans out.
Yeah.
Should we talk week 5 and make some predictions here?
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's do
All
it.
right, let me pull up the scoreboard. Okay. So we've got Johnny 3 against myself. Currently, I'm projected to win by about 3.5 points, 52%. If you look through here, we've got pretty favorable matchups throughout. Gonna be a pretty even matchup according to the spread. Maybe the defense comes down to that again. We'll see. He's got a couple guys like Brian Robinson. Not sure if he's going to be back this week. Swift should probably be out again, so I expect that to go to 0, and maybe that'll help Williams's projection. Hopkins still suspended. Any thoughts on this one? You taking the points and picking Johnny +3, or you riding with me this week?
I'm gonna ride with Nick. I think Denver might put up some points against Indianapolis this Thursday. Hopefully, I mean the Thursday games have been. I think all the primetime games have been pretty boring.
Yeah, this one's gonna be boring as hell.
Yeah, either super boring or Russell Wilson runs like 2 in. And I think Jamal's gonna run all over the Pats. I think it's just gonna be a little baby shootout with the Billy Zappi led New England Patriots. And
I think
Olave looks like a
a stud.
but
Stud.
Olave looks like the Sonic the Hedgehog man.
Yeah.
He's so fast.
He looks so good.
Yeah, he does. He looks awesome.
I think we're going to see a little bit of the same storyline that we talked about earlier with Johnny, where Johnny's has every reason to think that he's going to score what he's projected, but I just think his opponent is going to score more. I mean, I like every matchup. Gerald Everett has quietly been like a really solid pickup at tight end. I love Olave. Eckler is starting to get into form. I think it's going to be, Johnny's opponents are going to do what Johnny's opponents do and drop 120, 130. So I like Nick here with the points.
Yeah, I still have a lot of like question marks in my lineup. Like Scary Terry is not so scary. Zeke, like we talked about, Cooks, like we talked about, these are guys who they can easily put up 15, 20 points and they can easily disappear for the entire week. So we'll see. I feel like when my team clicks, it's going to be very hard to beat me, but they're just, I mean, hopefully for me, there are more weeks that my team clicks than there have been so far through 4. So I'll take myself. I'll bet on my own team -3 here. All right, Cam, you've got Rob. You want to talk us through your matchup? You're currently, and we should caution that most people probably haven't adjusted their lineups for week 5 yet, given that it's Tuesday night. So these percentages may change throughout the week, but as of our recording on Tuesday night, 47% likelihood, down about 6.
I'm a little bit nervous because Cordero Patterson has 0 points projected, and I'm still projected to lose by 6. It's hard. My team with projections has been weird. I was projected 133 after Thursday night's games, which is by far the highest in the league, and I still scored under 100 points. So it's hard for me to take myself in these situations. I don't really know how Algier is going to play into my flex play this week. He might end up being somebody that I plug and play until I can see something more out of Allen Robinson, and hopefully Kadarius Toney plays this week. But the only person who might be moving around is Algier for maybe Rashad Bateman. But to be honest, with the way it stands right now, I got to give the nod to Rob. There's just too many question marks with with receivers who underperform and the Algier play.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna take Rob in this one. And kind of what Cam said, Patterson has 0 points projected and he's still projected so high. Yeah, that Rob's got what, 2 of the best defenses, Buccaneers and Vikings. Buccaneers have been top, what were they, top 15 on that chart you sent us, Cam, and just in
Mhm.
points
Yeah.
in general, which is crazy for a defense. And of course he's got Mahomes and Tua and his bobblehead on the bench.
Yeah, I think I've identified the source of the reason why Cam is projected to lose here, and it's the
Yeah.
defense. This may be a week. We'll see when Cam goes to the waiver wire for a defense here.
Might have to spend some fab on that. Yeah.
Thanks for fab on a defense.
But yeah, I agree. I think even -6, I think I'm gonna go towards Rob here, just because it's a prove it week for Cam's team, and we'll see what he's got. All right, next, here's a lopsided one, but this is largely due to injuries, and we'll see what Colin's roster looks like when he actually hits the field. But he's currently projected a 22-point deficit to Eric, a 37% chance to win compared to 63 for Eric. Thoughts on this one?
I feel like I keep just kind of driving the nail into the coffin for Colin here, but yeah, I think it's going to be an Eric in a landslide. Looks like Fournette's coming into form. Justin Jefferson had another good game. He's going to play the Bears, and I mean it's a divisional game. I'm sure he's going to get tons of looks. Hawkinson, we'll see if Amon-Ra's back. If Amon-Ra comes back, Hawkinson will get a few less points, but I mean he's got such a solid team with Jeff Wilson and Gabe Davis as his flex player, so it's tough. And I'm sure Eric's going to take out his -1 defense. So his point total will go up pretty healthily.
Yeah, this game's going to come down to some flex play, and I mean, if you look at the flexes right now, I don't love the Russell Gate. He's probably going to come out. But if Gabe Davis plays like Gabe Davis played in Week 1, and Jeff Wilson played like he played last night, that's going to be the X factor, I think. I mean, Eric's team is one of the deepest in the league, but it comes down to flex play this week, I think, for these two teams.
I do think the numbers are changing here. This is live results that are coming in as Colin adjusts his roster while we're talking. But I think Eric wins, but I'll take Colin plus 18 points. I think this is the week. I think this is the week he beats the median. I think he's going to spend fab, and I think he's going to really improve his roster. And so give me a win, but a loss for Colin in that regard.
You're not taking Colin money line, is what you're saying.
Correct. Okay, next up, we've got a matchup of Alex and Wayne here. We've got a tight one. This one is projected to be 3 points in Wayne's favor, 48% to 52%. Are you laying the points with Wayne, or are you taking them with Alex here in this matchup?
I'm on the Wayne train with this one. I think Kyler Murray's going to have a shitty game. He's playing against the Eagles defense, which is just absolutely fucking ridiculous right now. Excuse me. And Mark Andrews is just out of this world, and they're in a primetime game. So I think he's going to have plenty of looks, and Devontae Smith is looking like he did at Alabama. So it's starting to come together for Dr. Wayne Cooper here.
Yeah, these are two teams headed in opposite directions, right? My dad's on a 4-game win streak. Alex is on a 4-game losing streak. This is a situation where even though Kyler Murray's projected more than his backup and Trevor Lawrence, I might pick Trevor Lawrence playing a Houston team that is just god awful on defense. And they're probably going to throw the ball out to Christian Kirk. I take my dad, but I'll give Alex the 3 points. I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be one of the higher scoring games this week.
Yeah, I'm going to take Alex plus the 3 points, and sticking with my theme of defenses having an outsized influence. mean, this Bills defense is stout, and Pittsburgh, they've got quarterback questions. They don't have a lot of weapons. I really think, Buffalo could be poised to trounce this Pittsburgh offense and, give him 20 plus points from his defense. I think an outsized defense performance helps Alex outperform the projections here.
Also, this is a game of guys on a I believe, yeah, Alex is on a 4-game losing streak and Wayne is on a 4-game winning streak here. So we'll see if the unstoppable force meets the immovable object here.
Okay, here we go, Troy. It's your matchup. You've got a 9-point advantage according to the experts over Jason, 54% chance, 7-1 against 2-6. So definitely a matchup of two teams who have had opposite starts to their year. How do you feel about your matchup?
I feel pretty good. I think the Baltimore-Cincinnati game is going to be a high-scoring affair. I think everything except for this past weekend against the Bills, the Baltimore Ravens let up like 30 plus points. Hopefully, I get Amon Ra back. He's huge for my team. He is kind of he's kind of like the blocker for my high chase pick that hasn't really performed well. And I'm just kind of still excited about having Nick Chubb. I love having a new toy in the toy box. Get to watch a new perspective on Red Zone every Sunday. And he's playing against the Chargers, so they're going to try to keep it on the ball on the ground a lot, I'm sure, to keep Herbert off the field.
Yeah, I think Troy wins, but I think it's going to be higher than I think Troy wins by 9 or whatever the projection is. But I also think that it's going to be a high scoring game. I think Jason finishes above the median. I mean, Vegas is playing the Chiefs, so it's going to be a high scoring affair. I think we're going to finally see the breakout game for Derek Carr, Adams, and Waller all together. I still think Troy wins, but I think Jason gets a dub above the median this week.
I'll go the opposite. I think this might be the most lopsided matchup of the week. I do not believe in the Raiders. I do not believe in them at Kansas City on Monday night. I think the Kansas City defense has looked very good at times this season. And I think this is a week where the Raiders lay an egg on prime time. So, by guilt by association, then I think Jason lays an egg. So I'm going to give it to Troy by more than 9. And our last matchup of the week, we've got Willie hosting Josh. I'm dubbing Willie the home team this week. He's got a 6-point advantage heading into the week, 53% chance to win. Matchup of maybe the two most exciting quarterbacks in the league to watch. What are your thoughts here about Willie against Josh?
Yeah, that was the first thing I wrote down. I was like, it's the battle of the big dogs in the quarterback room. They were head to head in real life last week, and now they get to go head to head in our fantasy league this week. And I'm expecting both of them to have rebound games. I mean, Josh Allen had 26, which was an off game for him, which is crazy to say. And Lamar is probably going to throw all over that Bengals defense. So.
Yeah, I think these are two of the hottest teams in our fantasy league right now, between Josh and Willie. Willie outperforming a lot of preseason expectations. This is probably the deepest wide receiver team in Willie and the deepest running back team and Josh. And they both, you could tell, they lack in the other skill position. I mean, Willie starting Samaje Perine, Josh Smart starting Matt Collins. I think it's going to be what is the line here?
About 5. Yeah, 5.5 or so.
Okay. I think I'm gonna take Josh. I think I'm gonna take Josh in this one. I think it's gonna be a lot closer than 5 points too. I just think this early, it's too early to say that Willie's gonna win by 5 points. But this is a classic test of is it still a wide receiver, powered league, or is it a running back powered league in this game?
Yeah, I'm going to take Josh. I'm sorry, I'm going to take Josh in the points. I realized I didn't give an answer.
I not to take an easy way out, but I feel like this just comes down to which quarterback goes off. Either one of these quarterbacks can put up 35 points when they're playing their best. So, I think I'll give the edge to Willie just because I trust Josh Allen against Pittsburgh a little bit more than I do Lamar against Cincinnati, and Cincinnati's got a pretty good defense.
And it's been time.
Yeah. Plus, I'm hoping Willie will not start Samaje Perine again this week. He's got Ramondre Stevenson on the bench, which I think is a much better option for him. But I think he's started Perine for the last few weeks, and he's 5-3, so credit to him.
And Josh has Keenan Allen on the bench. Hopefully, he comes back this week.
Yeah, hopefully he doesn't.
So I think we wanted to wrap it up with kind of a overarching discussion, one that we were having on our last podcast about is this a wide receiver or a running back focused league, and are wide receivers having an outsized impact on fantasy this year? What are your guys' thoughts on that?
I know this is Cam's baby of a topic. He loves this discussion. He's mentioned it multiple times in the podcast and multiple times in the group chat when we're discussing the podcast. But I disagreed with him last week or last podcast, but I believe now. I think I'm a wide receiver truther now. After Cam sent me the chart of leading into week 3, there was one running back in the top 10 of points in fantasy football, and he was 10, and it was Saquon Barkley. And it just seems that wide receivers are just taking the proverbial ball and running with it, pardon the extremely obvious pun.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a changing of the tides in the league, right? Like we're seeing fewer and fewer bell cow running backs, a lot more running backs by committee. And I mean, if Monday night was any, indication, Cooper Kupp getting 19 targets, like it's a fast-paced, pass-paced game. I think we're going to see, I think through this season and the beginning of next season, we're going to see a lot fewer running backs picked in the first round, a lot more wide receivers picked in the first round. Like I think 2 years ago, it was like 8 of the first top 10 players were running backs. I think it's turning into more of a balanced league in that position. If you look at that chart, it's crazy. I mean, you see the worst, you got, 6 running backs in the top 50, and you have people like Cortland Sutton, Laviska Shenault, Garrett Wilson in the top 50 of fantasy war for wide receivers.
Michael Pittman was top 15.
That's crazy. I mean, I don't know. Yeah. I mean, and you have, you have 5 defenses. So you have one fewer defense than you do running back in the top 50. It's a small sample size, but it's definitely something to consider when you're thinking about how is the landscape of the league shifting.
Yeah, I feel like you keep seeing every year more rule changes in the NFL that benefit wide receivers, and not so much rule changes that benefit running backs. And to your other point, Cam, like it just feels like there's not really bell cows. I mean, Leonard Fournette has been, one of the more bell cow-ish running backs. And even in, the matchup that he had this week, they were talking on the broadcast about how, the Bucs have made a point to get other running backs involved because they know they can't hand it to him 30 times a game and expect him to last the whole season. So I think it's just it's a recognition by the league as to what they have to do to keep their star running backs healthy, and that benefits their star wide receivers. So I do think it's a league that's shifting more towards wide receivers.
Yeah. And I'll say this too. If you look, my team is kind of an epitome of this, right? I drafted my running backs. I got Najee and Saquon, two of the few remaining bell cows in the league, with the notion of like, all right, I'm good on receiver if I got these two guys getting the volume. And my team is underperformed, right? Like I don't have a true wide receiver one, and I think that's hurt me so far this year. So I think, if that's any indication from a fantasy perspective, especially in a half PPR league where receiving running backs like Saquon and Najee are pretty valuable. I think from fantasy perspective, it's priority number one that you secure a wide receiver one.
Any other last thoughts before we dismiss the class?
My last thought is last week we discussed a team having 10 losses in this league, and also a team having what did Colin say, 18 wins?
I think we settled on 17, right? 17.
Yeah, it was 17 or 18. After the last 2 weeks, what do you guys think the odds are of a team, one, having more than 10 losses, and two, having more than 17 wins?
I think we'll have a couple of teams with more than 10 losses, I believe.
I'd say so.
I think we'll probably have two. I think I'll put the over under at 2.5. I think I'll put the over under for 17 wins at 1.5. I think we'll probably get one. And it looks like it's going to be Troy right now. If it's not Troy, then something has drastically shifted in this league, and I will definitely take the under in that situation. 17 still is an interesting pick, but I definitely think we'll have two, if not three teams finish with over 10 losses.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, if Troy's team doesn't take like a massive injury or two, I expect him to be right around that mark. And it's hard to make a case that there's going to be another team that's there. I mean, we don't even have a 6-2 team. The next team is already 2 off the pace of Troy at 7-1. So, I wouldn't expect more than one team to get to 17, but I do think we'll have a few. I mean, we've got one who is getting pretty close and might be there by the next podcast at 10 losses. So, I think we'll have a few.
Do you think Colin gets to 15 losses?
I don't. I really think he's going to be spending fab in bunches over the next couple of weeks as needed, and I think that will help him, stabilize his season.
Yeah, he's too smart of a fantasy player to just have a stink of a season.
He's too involved. I wouldn't sleep on Jason taking a hard left turn and continuing down the path. Well, those two things don't make sense, but I think Jason might continue to underwhelm. And he doesn't seem to be as involved this year as he has in the past. He doesn't spend any fab. So he might, pace Colin for a worse record overall if Colin starts figuring it out.
Yeah, one of my notes is Jason's taking a nosedive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anything else?
That's it for me.
All right. Well, good show, and
baby.
we'll reconvene in a couple weeks.
Sounds good.
Namaste.
See you guys.